Igbo cosmology challenged me to reconsider my idea of self. Not only what happens to you when you die, but what are you while you're alive? Which one of those aspects of a person is that person? Are you your consciousness, your body, some sort of abstraction, like a collection of memories and experiences? Are you somehow all of these things, or none of them at all? This is Derek O'Fodernwell with TheMedicineShell, and today I'm going to discuss ancestors in Igbo cosmology. What is an ancestor and why they matter? What role they have in our lives, and most importantly, how to connect with them, which I hope by the end of the video you'll understand why that's necessary. In studying the ancestors, we are directly confronted with all the questions I asked earlier, and introduced to a point of view about personhood that may be new to many. I want to ask this question before starting. If you have an answer, leave a comment below. The question is a long one, so bear with me, but do you have an ancestor that you see yourself in, or parts of yourself in? Someone in your family history that you feel an understanding for or a connection to? Or maybe even look like? What's something about them that reminded you of yourself? Or maybe a story in your family history that you found interesting? Most importantly, have you ever been visited by an ancestor? Or have you had a communication experience with somebody that's no longer with us? I'll share my own experience at the end of the video and look forward to reading yours. Like I said, comment below, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you get notifications right away when I make new videos. If you're new to the channel, I cover Igbo spirituality. If you're interested in the topic, I of course invite you to subscribe as well. If you're also interested in helping the channel grow and stay alive, you can support The Medicine Shell on patreon.com/TheMedicineShell. I make all of my research materials available to my patrons by giving them access to my e-library with hundreds of books, articles, and studies on Igbo spirituality and history. We also have an Odinani study group, which is a live discussion where we tackle different topics and give the ancestral perspective on it as well as our own thoughts and opinions. And of course, access to an in-house dibia for our higher tier patrons. So if you're interested in that, go to patreon.com/TheMedicineShell and support this channel. That being said, let's begin. An ancestor is a person you descend from, one of the people that created you who is no longer with you in the physical form. And this concept in human understanding is core to nearly everything we do as human beings. It is at the core of most religions, if not all, as well as culture and understanding of self and others. In most religions, the concept of God itself gains status because God is believed to be an original ancestor or a first ancestor. And it's this position at the beginning of the human lineage that makes God the center of most religions. And for this reason, the divine consistently bears the name Father or Mother in nearly all human spiritual understandings. And therefore, much of what I'll share in this video will not be unique to Odinala and Igbo. Though towards the end of the video, I hope to share a perspective that may expand your understanding of the ancestor concept, regardless of your belief system. In Igbo cosmology, ancestors are central to all spiritual understanding, and in fact rank above what we call the Arushi in importance and daily interaction, as forces are revered based on their role in our creation. Family and the ancestors that make family possible are at the nucleus of importance in the Igbo worldview. Odinani Igbo is not alone in being called ancestor worship by many on the outside, as this title is used to describe many, if not most, of Africa's traditional spiritual systems, but is not completely accurate. God in the Igbo worldview is Chineke, and we do not worship ancestors, but being an ancestor is the reason we worship God. In Odinala and Igbo, an individual's life is not a book, but rather a page in the middle of a story that stretches to the beginning of existence. The narrative, or one's idea of self, cannot be told, understood, or manifest without knowing what was written before, and what will be written after this brief segment of the story that so happens to focus on us. As I've said in previous videos, in Igbo cosmology, an individual is made up of four essences: Chi, Eke, Agun, and Mo. Chi being the creating spark that is central to an entity, an individual's divinity which determines destiny. Eke being you as a part of creation, something that is real and manifest in the living world, and Agun being your divine mind, all that is within and associated with consciousness, the subconscious, and purpose. And finally, we arrive at Mo, which I will explain shortly, but is key to understanding the ancestors and how a connection is made and sustained. What is important to understand about these four elements is that they are shared with all of creation. Eke is personified as Neke, the divine feminine, who is the universe itself. All of the elements it took to create her are the exact elements it takes to create you. You are one with the minerals of the soil, the waters of the stream, and the dust of the stars above. And for this reason, self is not associated with the body alone in Igbo cosmology, as the body is not yours alone, not your creation, but rather a vessel or a conduit for bringing these elements together, for your existence to happen. At the same time, you are not your chi. All things have chi, and your chi is a manifestation of the greater design, making you a single thread in a larger, longer, universal fabric of causality. Your chi determines you and influences you, your destiny and your personhood, but you're independent of your chi as well, as your chi is independent of you. Then there is Agun. Agun is the part of you that reincarnates. It is your divine mind that returns to the earth for a reason. It is a part of you and your access to the mind of the universe. But Agun is not the self, and the self is not Agun. And then there is Mo. While Mo is often translated as the spirit, the concept goes beyond the idea of the ghost self. Mo is the part of you that grows and changes with you throughout life. Metaphorically speaking, Mo is you as a spiritual song. It is a cosmic vibration that is created as the sum total of your person, identity, beliefs, actions, principles, habits, experiences, and memories. Everything that you are serving as a note that all comes together to give you and your life meaning and spirit. And every time this song is played, you are present. And every time you are present, the song is played, even when those two examples are not the same. More is what you feel when you enter an empty room but sense that a person has been there. It is what allows you to receive and send messages that cannot be explained. It is a feeling deeper than feeling, the way Agun is thoughts that is deeper than thoughts. And the Igbo language expresses the duality of personhood with the phrase Madu na Mo, Madu the person and Mo the essence, both influencing each other equally, the way the left foot and the right foot work together to move the body forward. This cosmic vibration can also be personified as a spiritual liquid that runs off a person at all times, meaning that everywhere you are, you leave traces of it, and all things that come from you, be they works of creativity, words, ideas, friends, family, and community, all have traces of that essence that came from you on them, as the creativity and words of others, as well as the more of your friends, family, and community, all have their traces on you. So if you are a page in the longer book of existence rather than an isolated book unto itself, more is what the reader feels when they read your section of what is written. But like Chi, Eke, and Agun, more is only part of the answer in understanding what is self and ancestral thoughts, while the rest of the answer lies in the ancestors themselves. In Igbo cosmology, ancestors are central to all things. The world we live in, regardless of your culture or background, is an inherited collective imagination from our ancestors and their contemporaries. I currently live in a country called the United States because a group of people who are no longer alive decided to pretend this portion of Earth was a thing called the United States, and by force and diplomacy they got the rest of the world to play along with them. And the same applies to my community in Igbo. And in line with the process, we inherited this collective imagination. We make adjustments in our lifetime and pass it to successive generations. Ancestors experience life and learning, then codify it in lessons that are passed down to the following generations, as a part of this collective spirit or collective imagination. Sometimes we call these lessons laws, other times customs, ethics, sciences, culture, rituals, traditions, religion, or beliefs. When the imagination is in our hands, we strive to leave an imprint on it, or do what we believe will improve it for the coming generations, often by making it comfortable for ourselves before passing it on. Throughout Africa, but in this case specific to Igbo culture, interaction with the ancestors is interaction with the more that people leave behind for us specifically. If we imagine our communities, personhood, and collective imagination again as a book, tapping into the more our ancestors leave behind is an opportunity to ask the author directly about what was written within. This makes the ancestors a primary source of answers and questions about fate, meaning, and destiny, and a foremost presence in resolving disputes or establishing truths, as well as being the well by which meaning and purpose for the collective and family is derived. The study of history, for example, which is a form of ancestor veneration, therefore gives us an owner's manual for the world, humanity, family, or community we're set to inherit. Outside of learning and gaining from ancestors, due to the nature of more, our people assert that an individual never truly dies, but rather transitions, as their Chi, Eke, Mo, and Agun go their separate ways, giving their personhood a new journey and a new form. As Eke returns to Eke, Chi returns to Chi, Agun seeks to reincarnate, and Mo remains with us on Earth. Mo as an energy cannot be destroyed and does not have the moral lifespan of Maru, as the things that hurt you do not hurt your shadow, meaning that an individual is still with us, but in a form that operates in a new set of rules that must be understood in order to interact properly with it. Ordinal Andibo has established methods for actively speaking to Mo and connecting with ancestors, which I'll discuss at the end of the video. With or without the assistance of ritual and ceremony, Mo can communicate to individuals through dreams, signs, memories, and visions. The Mo of our ancestors can impact our own to move a person's life in one direction or another, to give you an awareness that we call intuition about the world around you, to warn you from danger or point you towards your blessings. Because we are the children of our ancestors, they serve to protect, guide, and uphold the family and the individual through their endeavors. And because every person's Mo is unique to them, each person's force has a specific power associated with the person that brought them into this world. For this reason, we call on specific ancestors for specific challenges, tasks, and answers. Mo belonging to an ancestor who was particularly tough may arouse a fighting spirit or resilience. A compassionate ancestor may be called upon when we struggle to forgive or achieve selflessness. The Mo associated with an ancestor who was talented will guide their descendants in their creative pursuits. And that of a successful ancestor assures that the success recurs through the family when the spirit is leaned on. Ancestors experience the world through us and can manifest in our bodies to shine their light in the world. Many of our talents, habits, and proclivities belong to an ancestor who occasionally uses our body to express their art, personhood, or gifts to the world. Ancestors can also use us to send messages to others and fulfill unfinished business on the earth. At the same time, ancestors' faults and weaknesses can serve as a cautionary tale for descendants and may inspire a push towards the opposite direction for those to come. Like a psalm, there's a specific dance or effect your Mo will have on the things around it. There's an energy or nature that emanates from each person's Mo. And this is the reason that certain people will make you feel a certain way when you're in their presence or feeling their memory. When you are down, the people around you will begin to feel so without you saying a word. If you are afraid, your Mo will spread the energy of nervousness or unease. If your Mo is charged and you're full of light and energy, the people around you can feel it. If you live a violent life, your presence or Mo can spark a desire to fight or do violence, and the same applies for those who conduct themselves or live peacefully. Unlike Maru, Mo has a permeating nature, meaning that the Mo of the people and things around you will seep into your own, and your own will seep into theirs until an equilibrium or a drift towards middle ground is achieved. A person who is unhappy may dampen the mood of a happy person, but the happy person will uplift theirs until both are more similar than they were apart. And this is important to remember when we discuss who is an ancestor and who is not, and is also reflected in the Igbo proverb, when you see something dancing on top of the sea, you must know that there is something underneath the waters that is playing the tune. Because the invisible directly affects the visible. In Odinala and Igbo, final judgment is not done by God. All things good and bad are brought into existence by Chineke, which is beyond our subjective or narrow and opinion-based view of creation, as our inability to see all things is what makes judgment possible. For this reason, final judgment is not done by Chineke, but by an individual's family and community. Once an individual passes, what happens to them is determined by how the family chooses to bury or celebrate the individual. Specific things done in the burial process determine whether an individual will become an ancestor and reincarnate, or fade from the forefront of the family's memory. I've made a video on reincarnation in the afterlife in the Igbo worldview that breaks down how this works. So if you're interested, I've added the link below, and you can watch it after this video. In order to become an ancestor, there are 8 key things that must be present in an individual's life, or factors around their death, that make it possible. Number 1 is they must have died a good death, which is a death after having a marriage and children. Number 2, they must have contributed to the continuity of the lineage. Number 3, they must have lived as a peacemaker between the people and between the spirits and living. Number 4, they must have brought honor to the family name and lived a life worthy of repeating. Number 5, they must have kept to the traditions of the land. Number 6, they did not desecrate or violate the earth or break the sacred laws of any land they found themselves in, including their own. And if this did happen, they have atoned for their sin. And then number 7, they must be given a dignified and full burial in their ancestral or family land. Once an individual is established as an ancestor, veneration of them follows a pattern primarily oriented towards acknowledgement. The most important principle in the relationship between the individual and the ancestor is this acknowledgement, because the more the ancestor lives, they are still a part of the family. And as a part of the family, they are afforded the love, inclusion, respect, and belonging they enjoyed in life. And therefore, acknowledging their presence alone occupies the majority of ancestor to mortal communication. This can be done by breaking the kola before every meeting, an act that honors and brings the ancestors of those in the room forward, and acknowledges them by preserving their tradition, as the kola is a symbol for the timeless connection between the present, future, and that which came before. And there are a few other examples I can share, but acknowledgement of one's ancestors is not limited to these examples, and I invite anybody to be creative, add their own flair to how they do their own. Outside of the kola nut, another example is the meal. In Odinala and Igbo culture as a whole, a meal is never enjoyed alone. So while an individual is eating, one can cast the last bites into nature in memory of their ancestors, or offer a little bit of what they're eating to their ancestral altar to show that you have prepared a plate for them. If you are drinking, a little of what you are drinking can be given to the earth in the form of pouring libations for the dead, so that your ancestors are enjoying what you are drinking with you. Dancing the dances of your ancestors, singing their songs or making their music is another form of connection and acknowledgement. Caring for the family on their behalf by keeping peace within it and partaking in the raising of the young and caring for and honoring of the old also means you acknowledge your ancestors as you are assisting them in doing their primary family role. Teaching, participating in, and passing down tradition, family stories, and family property from one generation to another is another form of acknowledgement as you are doing your ancestors' will, and blessing them by blessing your family. But most specific to building a connection with the ancestors is the establishment and maintenance of an obi-chi, or a chi altar, which features devotionals to the ancestors. I discuss how to build and use an obi-chi in my video, How to Build an Ancestral Altar, so I'll leave a link below if you're interested in knowing more on how this is done. The centerpiece of ancestral connection in the family is the Ofo. The Ofo is a staff of authority passed from first son to first son, or eldest man to eldest man, depending on the family's rules. Because all of the previous family members or family leaders have touched the Ofo, it is a vessel for their mo, and therefore contains their presence, or spiritual force they created while they were experiencing life. The holder of the Ofo is therefore the speaker for the ancestors and the head of the family. And within a household, the holder of the Ofo is the leader of the household in the same regard. If you would like a video explaining the Ofo, how it works, how it's created, and what it all means, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd be very happy to do that one. The holder of the Ofo is therefore responsible for holding daily communion with the ancestors. While everyone is welcome to do the same, it is the solemn responsibility of the Ofo holder to acknowledge, remember, and communicate with the ancestors on a daily basis, as a matter of duty. Communion also extends to offering a sacrifice before the Ofo to celebrate or seek family blessings such as new births, new marriages, breakthroughs, and success, or as a token of appreciation and higher acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of the ancestors is done in a wide and varied expanse of ways, and when done, the connection between Madu and Mo sparks, strengthens, and becomes a visible part of reality for the individual who does it. You may begin to dream more, understand signs that are presented before you, or receive messages with a great deal of clarity and ease than prior. Most importantly, it allows an individual to tap into another form of themselves, and that is the self as an extension of a lineage. And while human life has a linear feel as events happen one after another, the nature of Mo is cyclical, similar to a song. More does what the individual did in their life again and again. And unlike human events that happen one at a time, all events and more experiences are experienced at once, meaning that your more is everywhere you have been in your life simultaneously, touching everything you have touched at the same time, seeing everything you have seen all at once. Because more mixes with other more and repeats cycles and events, welcoming the spirit of an individual who died prematurely or caused destruction and pain within the family while they were alive will allow these events to seep back into the family and repeat themselves. It is for this reason that not all people become ancestors. It is important to note that refusing an individual ancestorhood does not mean that they were not loved, but because the more is the part of an individual that is tied to events, actions, habits, character, impact, and principles, refusing an individual ancestorhood means that you reject those aspects of the person as opposed to the person in full. And this includes individuals who commit suicide, individuals who pass away before marriage, individuals who have a character which is rejected or deemed negatively by the family, individuals who are struck down by an arushi, which is sometimes seen with people who die by thunderstrike, people who die from contagious diseases which cause extreme inflammation, people killed by a swarm of bees, or individuals who die committing a sin against another person, such as a botched armed robbery. Then there are individuals who betray or work against their family or people who bring shame to their family, and individuals who have taken the life of another. Some communities will have a longer list of individuals they don't bury, while others will have differing specifics due to the nature of the laws of the land and spirits they acknowledge. And that's it. This is Derek O'Fodder with the Medicine Shell. I'm going to give my perspective on the self based on the Igbo worldview and how it explains why we connect with ancestors shortly. But first, I want to give a shout out to the patrons that make this channel possible. Carl, Chinwe, Akuma Nwokorie, Malcolm from New Jersey, Amala, Ike, T.E.O. Biaya, Jess Akun, Kwasi Densu, Eric Mwozuzu, Isioma Orihu, Jess Akun, Jonathan Randall, Jordan Williams, Joshua Stepney, Manza, Nikki, Nina Nwafia, Neka Onyise, Nenaya Amuchi, Nwaka, Oluchi, Omelga, Sessa Salam, Olama Obara, Timel Jones, Adora, Ememe, Gretchen Segers, Ike Oke, Lena West, Sheila, Sheena, Sharika Regina, that rhymed, Tochukwu Awache, Urena Kara, Adora, and Anwulikau. In order to understand the perspective of self, developed through studying ancestorhood in Odinala and Igbo, we have to challenge the idea of identity being distance and distance being identity. In some schools of thought, things are what they are because they are not something else, or there is a space between them physically or conceptually. If you have one puddle of water and place a brick or a wall perfectly down its center, something in our mind tells us we're now dealing with two puddles of water, which is true on an observational level, but it's also true that we're simply dealing with one body of water that happens to have a brick or a wall down its middle. So in this conclusion, we're going to set aside the concept that I am me because I am not you, and retain the concept or idea of self despite differences in spaces, which sounds abstract, but bear with me. If the idea that I am me because I am nobody else affects how we see ourselves and why our ancestors matter. In the ancestral worldview, the body and the mind are vessels that separate individuals on an observational level, but does not separate them on a real level. You and your ancestors are the same person. They are parts of you and you are a version of them. The way the infant and the teenage you are versions of you, and the way your heart and mind are parts of you. And so the individual is not a singularity, but a continuum through time and space. And everything within the ancestral practice in Odinala and Igbo boils down to this. A home can be made of many bricks, the way an individual is made of many people. If you're a brick in that structure, you can see yourself as the brick and be accurate. But you can also see yourself as the home, as everything it takes to make it is one. And this is also correct. And we can even see this on a biological level, with your body being a pool of billions of independent cells, which all come together to make you. What's even more interesting to me is that none of the cells in your body today were alive 12 years ago, and the ones from that time are completely gone, meaning that your body is 100% different on a physical level from your body 12 years ago. But we're all able to see the oneness of you and ourselves, despite this difference in time and space. Connection to your ancestors allows you to see that oneness on another level, and understand the full scope of yourself as a continuum of existence, a page within a book rather than an entire book itself. Another space we put between ourselves and others is the idea of consciousness. Because I have one consciousness, this makes me one person, different from others who have their own consciousness. I cannot be my father because he has his own consciousness, nor can I be my son because he has one of his own. My mind controls me, my great-grandfather's mind controls him, and therefore we cannot be linked nor the same thing beyond semantics. But my consciousness does not control my heartbeat, which is a part of me. It does not control the individual cells that make me, nor does it control any of my organs outside of some muscles and some of my tendons. In fact, we as people barely control our thoughts or what runs through our minds. So if my ancestors or family are not me because there is a space between us called consciousness, we have to somehow regard the heart as its own person. Creation of another person is a means by which living things extend themselves through time and space, each creation being a temporary part of that self, but never the whole. And from this understanding, we are our ancestors. They are us. They are within you. They walk with you. They talk through you. And they experience the world again and again through the self we call a lineage or a family. In the beginning of the video, I had asked if you could share any stories you have of ancestors or ancestral messages. And this is one that happened to me. In 2015, I had a dream where one of my cousins told me that my great-grandfather, 5 times removed, wanted to see me in a house that was built by my great-grandfather. This was around the time that my grandfather was passing, and he was living in his father's home, which is the great grandfather. And I had gone back to Nigeria to visit him. I followed my cousin up the stairs, and once I got there, I looked directly at my great grandfather 5 times removed, and it was a surreal experience. What was really weird about it was that the person I was looking at was somebody I had never seen before, but felt like a full formed person, somebody who had already lived and had their own thoughts and personality and was there with intention. From what I can remember, his skin was very dark, and his eyes or parts of his face looked a lot like my own father, mixed with a distant relative that we have that also descends from him. Like I said, I had this sense that I was looking at a whole person that had existed before and was here visiting me deliberately. He didn't say anything. He just kept looking at me. He didn't smile. He didn't flinch. And I remember two of my cousins were standing on his side, holding palm leaves over his head, kind of in a royal um, configuration, like guards. Now, this particular ancestor was a warlord. You can see it in his face. He was famous for his fierceness against his enemies. There's a song that we sing in our town till this day about how he used the bowl of his enemy's scalp to eat yams. And when he would defeat another warlord or general, he would take the rope of their testicles and tie it around his offal. And the offal is still in the family till this day. But that's all a topic for maybe another video. Anyways, he just kept looking at me without saying anything, and somehow I knew it was time to go, or that the experience was over, and I woke up. Now, the next day, my grandfather passed, and something about that dream showed me how all of this, or all of us, were interconnected. Somehow it felt like some type of initiation, or like a nod of approval or acceptance. And I can't really put it to words, but there was a way that the dream had impacted me till this day that may or may not be behind what inspired me to make this channel. So again, this is Derek with Watermelon with the Medicine Shell. Share your stories below if you have anything similar, and thank you for watching.